You found Paranormal M, where we explore what others fear to speak of. Every tale is a breadcrumb leading deeper into the supernatural unknown. Subscribe and ring the bell. Your journey into darkness has just begun. My paranormal experiences that changed my life. This all occurred 5 years ago. I had a friend in high school who I'll refer to as D. And D and I were very good friends for a long time. I was having home issues at the time and had developed some anxiety due to that. So I was at his house, and as much as I really could have this place as sort of a place of comfort, never experienced any weird stuff for at least a few months into knowing him. But as time progressed, that all changed, and progressively things got worse and worse. I refuse to go over to his house now, and our friendship has drifted due to this. Keep this in mind. I don't believe there was a ghost in his house. I believe there was something far more dark and sinister. So I want to elaborate on why I think that something of that nature would be attracted to D's house, and why it would try to harm me. A bit of background about D, and his family. I personally think these things attributed to whatever haunted his house, or rather haunted me. They were slobs. I mean, their house was filthy and disgusting. The more I got to know D and his family, the more I realized how negative they all were. Especially D, who I was best friends with at this time. His dad was an addict, and so was D. An addict to weed, alcohol, food, smoking, anything. Didn't matter. They lacked any semblance of self-control. This, I believe, was the main cause. I got D into PC gaming, and let's say that he isn't too clever with his browsing history. I accidentally stumbled onto some particular tastes he has. Very odd, specific tastes. I won't disclose what it was, but know that it was definitely something that would attract evil, if you believe in that sort of thing. I'm no prude, so trust me when I say I doubt this taste is anything you've ever looked up late at night. I started to realize over the months that we were spending, pretty much every day together, almost all day. And that D was a dark person, full of jealousy, hatred, selfishness, and objectively speaking, a dumb person. He didn't really try to hide his vices. I found a lot of disturbing things in his room, and in closets in the house. I kept everything to myself, and he ended up telling me about his problems with his taste years later. We both experienced a paranormal event that night. But that's a long and different story altogether, really. I think it's important to note that I was raised Christian, and I hold Christian beliefs. But I'm generally a bad Christian, and I've struggled with my faith and following what I believe. This hypocritical conviction, I believe, maybe played a significant role in my haunting. His family attended a cultist church that partakes in holy laughter and speaking in tongues. Excuse me. Something I was raised to believe was false and wrong. Whatever was haunting that house only haunted me, and still to this day, D and his family either think I made everything up or just don't care. I don't know which is true. I'll begin with the first experience. This must have been around 6 months into being there every day. But it might have been sooner. I started keeping my gaming PC at D's house after knowing each other for a few months. This came after some other stuff at home happened, and when D wasn't home, I would hang out there alone, chill after school. I basically lived there, kept all my stuff in his small guest bedroom, which shared a wall with D's room. The first experience I had, I was playing CSGO, and I heard what sounded like footsteps directly above my head. To give context to people who don't know what CSGO is, it's a competitive game that requires a lot of focus. And even though I could hear these sounds above my head, I just ignored them. It was the first time I would hear these footsteps. Footsteps that would become all too familiar. The footsteps sounded like pirate boots on a boat that you'd hear in Pirates of the Caribbean. Dramatic, large thuds with each step. The sounds persisted for at least 10 minutes off and on. That was before abruptly stopping, which was immediately followed by the closet door. A thin, sliding plywood door, arm's length away from, like being hit from the inside, and being hit hard. Imagine a small child were to run into a door. The desk my monitor was set on shook. I was just baffled and stuck in my chair from pure fear. I stared at the sliding door, waiting for it to open. But it became quiet instead. No footsteps. It scared me to the point where I just sprinted out of the room and to the front of the house, where I still just waited for Dee to get home. I told him what happened, and he didn't think much of it. Went into the room, and he slid open the door. Nothing. I searched the whole closet, no holes that, rats could come out of. Only a few empty cardboard boxes. From this point on, it became normal for me to hear footsteps directly above my head, but only whenever I was there alone. The footsteps would follow me throughout the house, and occasionally I would stop, and they would stop right above my head. And if I stayed still long enough, they would stop. I can't emphasize enough how much they matched my movement. And this may sound odd, but they reacted to my thoughts. I would think to myself, okay, I'm going to move in 3, 2, 1. And before I actually moved, the footsteps would stomp around and walk in circles. It was horrifying. I seriously could not explain it to myself. This was disturbing to me, but I really didn't have anywhere else to go, so I just ignored it and chalked it up to rats or something. This phenomenon would happen every few days, and when I was alone in the house, and each time it made me so scared, and it made me feel so alone. Fast forward a year maybe, and I'm lying in bed. Saturday morning, just in the house alone in the guest room. Dee's at work, his parents aren't home. It's 11 a.m. and I'm scrolling mindlessly on my phone. Breaking the dead silence instantly, I hear footsteps in the attic, but this time running from across the house very aggressively to exactly over my head. I remember it vividly. The running stopped right over my head and I just lay there in fear and in silence. The footsteps seemed like they were angry. For the first time, I felt a presence. It's hard to explain, but imagine your eyes are closed and somebody gets very close to your face. Even though you can't see or hear them, you can sense them. That's how it began to feel when this quote-unquote thing, like I would sense it before I even heard it. I became very acute to his presence over the years. It was a good 2 minutes before I went to get out of bed. And then, exactly as I'd mentioned with the footsteps to the thought of myself moving, a loud crash directly above me right where I was looking straight into the ceiling from the attic. It was as if, like, you were deadlifting 150 pounds and threw it onto the ground as hard as you could. I immediately sprinted out of the house again, except this time I walked home. That's because I knew it'd be hours before anybody was home. This is where I started dreading sleeping at his house. Was it in his attic? I became obsessed with that question. I told Dee this, and he nonchalantly wrote it off as an animal. But as much as I explained it to him that it reacted to my thoughts, he just didn't think much of it. A few days after this, we're in the garage. That's where there's, the entry into his attic. I convinced him to get a ladder, and I see what we can find in there. I went up first, shined a light deep into the darkness of the room. Couldn't see anything, and no amount of money on earth could compel me to enter this room. Something about it was just wrong. I saw, however, a box. A black box. It was in the back right corner of the attic, I think. Right above the guest room. I think this box was what maybe dropped over my head a few days previously. I had Dee look, and he saw it as well. In hindsight, I wish we had gone in and looked at what was in this box. I'll come back to this later. At this point, I want to clarify that I'm completely stable and have no history of schizophrenia or insanity in my family. I'm an extremely rational person, and up until this point had no interest or belief in spirits or ghosts or demons. I want to preface this because things get a little bit crazy after this. Dee had a dog who I'll refer to as P, and who I will refer to as Peter. Peter and I were best friends. He was truly an extraordinary dog. I loved him with all my heart, and he comforted me in my lowest moments, especially since life was hard, and I never really opened up to anyone. When I experienced all these things happening to me, Peter was there with me. So when I say alone, I really wasn't. In fact, I think Peter, if he wasn't there, maybe I wouldn't have been able to endure it. He was with me every single time I'd walk to get water, or go to the bathroom, or make food. The loud, horrifying footsteps would come back instantly over my head. It was basically a jump scare that could come randomly. It made me very paranoid and hesitant to move around the house. It was an abusive being that enjoyed haunting me, toying with me. Dee and his family left for a week to go on vacation. Asked me to take care of Peter. And at this point in time, I had 2 computers. I kept one at Dee's house and one at my own. And things had subsided a bit at my house, so I didn't spend every night at, Dee's house anymore. Went over to Dee's house every day and played with Peter and fed him. I'd hang out there for a few hours and head home. 3 days after Dee's family left, walking to their house, and Peter's freaking out, barking at something in the middle of his living room. I try to calm him down, but he just won't. He's just like growling and barking as if there's something in the middle of the living room. Finally, after what seemed like 5 or 10 minutes, he relaxes a bit. Still on guard, though. He follows me to his food bowl. Then to the guest room, where I played some games. No footsteps or presence that I was now very sensitive to be, hearing or feeling. It was kind of a rarity. I leave the next day, and I come over to the same thing. Peter is freaking out, and this time, way more aggressively. He's moving around the living room, but his gaze and posture is poised around the center of the living room as he moves around it. I feel the presence this time, and as I watch Peter bark and whimper and freak out, I try to listen. I listened for at least 5 minutes. I swear I didn't move a single muscle. Peter calmed down and looked at me, as if he knew I was just standing there listening. Finally, I think, all right, well, I don't hear anything. Maybe Peter's just upset that Dee and his family are gone. And this is the first time they left since I'd known them, and they spent a lot of time in the living room together. As I barely moved a centimeter, boom, 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 right above my head. Jumped at least 5 feet into the air, stomping, jumping, and clawing on the floor above my head. Peter starts freaking out and starts to almost attack the air in the middle of the living room. I'm thoroughly freaked the absolute fuck out, so I just run over to P's food bowl, pour in a lot of food, and run out of the house. And it was around this time I realized I really just do not ever want to be in his house again, alone or not. So, the next 2 or 3 days I go over there. P is still freaked out, but no barking or anything related to the living room. I quickly fed him and left. On the last day before Dee and his family came home, something happened. I enter the door and immediately feel the presence. It's almost as if the air itself gets humid and thick. I'm on guard, and Peter is crying this time. He is literally crying, jumping on me and whimpering as I enter the door. Take 1 step into the door, and a loud footstep right above me. First step I took into the house. I'd gotten almost annoyed with this thing at this point. Didn't really bother to stop and listen. I just headed straight to P's food bowl. Walk over to the side room where it's kept, and it's missing. The food bag, which is heavy and zipped, is still sitting there, but the bowl is missing. I look around, and as I walk around the house, I hear the footsteps following me in the attic. Above my head, and P is just whimpering, and every few seconds sometimes barking. I walked back out to the living room, and what I saw next literally has changed my life ever since. Peter's food bowl, sitting directly in the middle of the living room, right where Peter had been barking and attacking the air a few days prior. It was completely full of food, and in fact it was overflowing with food, as if it was a message. I knew why you were coming here. I remember walking backwards slowly out of the house, stunned. I could not believe my eyes. I shut the door, got into my car, and I forgot to mention I drove over with my girlfriend, and it was late, and she knew about, the whole house and the things I've experienced there. She said I was white as a ghost. No pun intended. Apparently had tears streaming down my face. Before I even said a word, I had the car pulling out of the driveway. She frantically was asking what happened, and it was all at that moment that I decided I would never go to that house alone, ever again. Dina's family came back. I told them what happened. His mom looked at me like I was a joke. And she sort of half listened to me and half listened to the TV show she was watching. I told his dad that maybe a homeless person was living in their attic and that he has to look in there. Finally accepted, and Dee and I walked into the garage with a ladder, and his dad peered into the attic with a flashlight. You said there's nothing in here. And I said, look in the back right corner. There's a black box there. No, there's not. Dee and I looked at each other, and for the first time, I think Dee finally... Maybe he was scared. He saw that black box himself. Dee and I told his dad about the box, and I told him that it was thrown at the ceiling floor when I was in the house alone. He didn't care. He just simply shut the attic door, climbed down the stairs, and put the ladder back. I told Dee that I was done sleeping at his house, and I was done staying there at all, period. I told him that if he wants to go over to my house, then that's fine, but I was going to take my computer home, and that was going to be that. He was super pissed. I told him that over the years he never took me seriously, and I was done. Simply was just too scary to be there, and after spending so much time there and enduring a lot of hardships in my own personal life, I guess I associated the horror of that house with the anxieties and worries of my own life. Throughout writing this post, I remember so many other things that happened to me in that house. But I think you get the point. Leaving that house for good was a life-changing decision for me. I don't know why those things happened to me, but in a weird way, it made me a stronger person. It's because I had to decide I was done, and I didn't care how much I made Dee feel. And it sounds selfish, but, well, maybe it is. My whole life, I never cared about myself first. And this was the first time I did. I've been back over there since. I vowed to never go back again. And in the short times I go over, I still feel a presence there. But Dee was a good friend, and he struggles with a lot of his own demons. So when he begs me to come over for a few hours, I do. I tried to spend the night one more time, and the sliding closet door was ran into again like the first time I was falling asleep. This completely solidified my decision to not stay over there again. I learned things about Dee after all this went down that made a lot of the evil in the house make much more sense. Dee is a disturbed and confused person. His family has a history of disturbing and sinister events. Whatever is in his house has forever changed my life, and my views on things that are unexplainable. Edit. I just want to add this here. I should have taken P, and I think that's something that maybe posting this has made me realize it. There's a lot of reasons why I couldn't, but I should have tried. I had the only key to Dee's house, all the doors were locked, and I would have known if the house was broken into. When I saw the food bowl, I literally just couldn't think straight. It was the most scared I've ever been in my entire life, and I just walked backwards out of the door while I looked at it. P was barking in the living room when I shut the door and locked it. I remember exactly the way he jumped and barked as I shut the door, as if I was looking at a picture. I could hear him barking as I walked to my car. My girlfriend was so confused as to why I walked backwards, she was laughing. Then I got in, saw that I was crying, and didn't even realize I was crying till we were out of the driveway. I regret not taking him, a lot. Leaving that house was the best decision of my life. I hope that when I left it, also left itself. and so hopefully it would leave Peter alone. If I sound a little bit weird, that's because I'm using a jerry-rigged setup. All my computer stuff is totally broken, along with other figurative things. On to the next story. Possible skinwalker experience. I was home alone with my older brother and sister. My parents weren't home. I can't remember where they went, but it's not important. My sister's in her bedroom, and my brother's on his computer a couple of rooms away. I was in the living room by myself. We have a lot of dogs, but for some reason, only one of them was outside. Don't remember what led up to me going outside to let her in, but I think it was about to start raining or something. Our garage leads to our backyard, so I go into the garage and out into the yard, standing in the doorway. I don't see my dog anywhere. Our yard is 2 acres, so I didn't really think anything of it. I step a little further out of the doorway and I look for her. Her name is Chloe, and that will be important to the story in a minute. We have this big concrete block outside the garage doorway. It's acting as a sort of a step, as our garage is slightly elevated. Step out of the doorway, now standing on the concrete, and call out her name. Chloe. I don't see her, which is very unusual for her. She's a very sweet and energetic dog. Always comes running when she's, even just sees you, even a little bit. Basically, you could say she would always come when being called. Call her name again, but I still don't see or hear her. I'm slightly confused at this point, but then I hear clapping. Like clapping you do when you're calling a dog. I stiffen slightly, and it sounds like it's coming from the side of the house. After it stops, I slowly step off the concrete block and onto the grass. I look at the side of the house. That's where I heard the clapping. There's no one there. None of her neighbors were even outside. I was really scared at this point. The clapping was so clear that there was no way I could have imagined it. I take a step back, closer to the concrete, ready to make a run for it. Call out for my dog one more time, not wanting to leave her out there. Chloe! A couple of seconds later, the clapping starts back up again. I'm terrified at this point. I don't have any clue what it is. Then I hear a man's voice, and I'm a girl, so it couldn't have been an echo. It was very clearly saying my dog's name. Chloe! It sounded like it was coming from the field by my yard. I didn't recognize the voice. I had heard each of my neighbors speak it before, and it was definitely not any of them. It sounded decently close by, but far enough away that I knew I wasn't in any immediate danger. The voice sounded almost mocking, like it was making fun of me. It was as if the voice was amused by my obvious fear and was mocking me. Only a few seconds after I hear the voice, Chloe comes running up to me from the other side of the yard. I would have been able to see her. I grab her and I run inside and lock the door behind me. I sit on the couch in the living room, scared out of my mind. My sister's still in her room, and my brother's still on his computer. I was alone in the room, except a few dogs, and trying to make sense of what just happened. After a while, my parents get home, and I tell my family what happened, and no one believed me. The only person who even remotely believed me was my mom, clearly seeing how distressed I was about the whole thing. If I had to guess, I would say it was a skinwalker, but all I know for sure was that was scary. If you guys like this story and want to hear more, I've got plenty more paranormal experiences to tell. However, out of all my paranormal experiences, this is the one I'm most adamant about. I used to dream about murder, and I used to see things. Advice. When I was 13 or 14, I met a friend who can quote-unquote sense things. I'm not sure what that would really be called here. Anyway, I started experiencing things myself, and I've never had an explanation. This was about 18 years ago, more or less, so I no longer remember specifics. But I hope whatever details I can give will help. It all started when we started hanging out and then stopped when I moved to a new school. We were friends for 2 years, and we went to a Catholic school here in the Philippines. I would dream about numbers. They were all in fire, and it's like a dark void and nothing else but those numbers. I would try dialing them on the phone, but nothing would happen. I also never saw them come out as lottery results. I don't remember how many numbers there are, but it's usually 7 numbers to reach someone, so I guess maybe 7 to 10 numbers. I would also dream about this woman in red. They'd be being chased and attacked in her unit. She lived high up. It would always end with her trying to escape through the balcony, and I would see the city lights outside. Sometimes I'm seeing her as her attacker. Sometimes I'm in one corner of the room as a third person. I was on the phone with a friend. I suddenly had some sort of a vision where I could see her home. I described everything in perfect detail. What lights were on, what the wall colors were, where the plants were displayed, where she sat and what she was doing, where she was going. So I was on the phone again with another friend, and he was telling me about the day before, and for some reason I totally forgot that we never met. But I could remember passing him. I told him what he was wearing down to his shoes and where he was walking along. I would feel things around me. One time I was dreaming that a woman was at the foot of my bed slowly pulling my blanket. I woke up, saw the blanket slide and fall to the floor in the same exact direction and area she was pulling it in my dream. I once woke up frozen with my hands on my chest. I felt so heavy, like something was pushing my body down, and could hear ticking sounds that were the same as the thing that used to lower down caskets. I fell asleep after the struggle. I woke up really tired. I quote-unquote dreamt that a young boy was bending over me from behind. I was in bed facing the other way. He was behind me and he was bent so that his face was above me where I was facing. That's as far as I can remember for now. It's worth noting that after we went separate ways, things stopped. Except for when I started feeling that something bad is going to happen. I become physically affected, and it actually does happen. I'm with you there. A scream in my room. So to start this off, it isn't cap or anything fake. Perhaps they mean crap. So let me rephrase this for you. To start this off, this isn't crap or anything fake. Like, this is 100% something that happened, and I promise I'm not lying. I am smart, and I look out for fake stuff. I don't fall for everything, at least everything I hear or see, so I know how it is hearing this stuff. But anyways, my brother and I are just laying in bed watching TV one night. It's about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, around 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. I believe we were just chilling, lights was on and all nothing scary. Then something coming from my closet area screamed super loud. It was real quick, like a real loud one, or 2 seconds. It was like an ah, pretty high-pitched. Me and my brother jumped under the covers so fast and stayed there all night until we fell asleep. Next day we woke up and told my family, but nobody believed us. They just said we probably stayed up too late. We were just hearing things. They was all asleep, by the way. But yeah, I can understand if only one person like me heard it and reacted. But it was me, my brother, so I'm sure there was something. Also, to throw out there, my friends and sister would come over and I told them about the story after we moved out. They all said they got weird vibes from that house too. That house where I had my worst nightmare That was when I was younger. Not gonna get into all that right now, because that's a story for another time. But yeah, some old lady lived there before us, so I don't know if she died there. Maybe it had something to do with her. I don't know what. But it was definitely freaky, and I'd always feel weird at that house when it was nighttime. Even in the day when I'd be home alone, it was just weird. My grandpa was pushed down his stairs. So my whole family lives in North Carolina now. This happened maybe about 8 years ago when he was living in Florida. A 2-story house whose history of the prior owners was unknown to him, or at least he didn't care to ask. He gets off of work around 3 p.m., and that's when he normally started doing things around the house. Little projects here and there, and my grandma, my nanny, gives him. However, this specific week he was just finishing up recovering from back surgery. Something about bone splinters at the bottom of the spine. Point is, he finally was able to start doing things around the house again. Carefully, of course. On this day, his project was to repaint his office. It was the room upstairs, which consisted of removing the wallpaper first. He didn't really pay no mind to where Nanny was. He was just kind of doing his own thing. He knew what he had to do, and a few minutes into him sitting on the floor removing the wallpaper, he heard a woman's voice behind him say, "Oh no!" The tone was concerned. Not yelling, but not calm either. He remembered it not exactly sounding like Nanny, but discarded it because who else could it be? He turned around in mid-sentence of saying, "What? You knew I was going to do this." Then stopped when he didn't see anyone there. He stuck his head out of the door to the hallway. He was asking where she went. No response. He walked over to the edge of the stairs to yell down for her, and that's when it happened. He physically, 100% without a doubt, felt 2 hands push his back, making him fall down the entire flight of stairs. After laying there in excruciating pain, he managed to stumble his way back. That's because it's the only other place where Nanny would be. If she was in the house, she would have heard him. She was outside, tanning in a lawn chair by the pool and reading the paper with a glass of tea. That's badass. My grandpa believed in the paranormal world after that. It was unmistaking, and I know he wouldn't lie. He's not a liar, and there would have been no reason to lie about that. Lived there for another year after that before moving up here, and never experienced anything in that time. I'm not really even sure if he ever finished painting that room, to be honest. What kind of ghost harms someone for tearing up some wallpaper? I think the term you were looking for is bone spurs. Although bone splinters is a little bit more onomatopoeia. I agree, Gecko. My childhood ghost. This happened when I was around 3, so I myself don't really remember it. My mom had just picked me up from kindergarten, left me in my room while she went to the kitchen to unload my bag and whatnot. She then came into my room maybe 10, maybe 20 minutes later, and I said, "Bye, see you again soon." That was as I waved toward the window. Obviously, my mom's first thought was that I either saw a little bird outside or I simply had an imaginary friend. So she asked who I was talking to which I replied, "My friend, Antonio." My mom doesn't remember the exact name, but says it was a relatively common name. Then she said I stood there staring outside for maybe 5 seconds before I nonchalantly said, "His dad beat him to death." She was very spooked by this comment, especially coming from a 3-year-old, so she asked me to describe what he was wearing. And according to her, I described a boy dressed in a typical early 1900s clothing. And by the way, we lived in a house from that, around that time at least. She asked me if he was dirty, implying he was covered in blood. I said no. Apparently, she heard me talk to the boy a few more times, but as the months went by, it happened less and less. She asked around her friends and even her pediatrician and said that kids say disturbing things sometimes, and that she just shouldn't worry. Well, at least not too much, unless it became a more frequent thing. She never really did any further research on the house, as she didn't want to ask questions she didn't want to find the answers to. I am so the opposite of that. It is detrimental. The Blue Indian. I'm a 37-year-old female, and this happened when I was about 11. I lived in a small brick house with my mom and younger brother. There were 2 bedrooms at one end of the house, which were mine and my brother's, with my mom's room being on the opposite end of the house. In my bedroom, I had a bunk bed, and I always slept on the top bunk. I had a ceiling fan and a light fixture, which had the metal pull cords, and I tied a string from one end that turns the light on and off, and attached that string to the top bunk so I could turn my light off once I'd climbed up to go to bed. So one night I'd stayed up later than I was supposed to. That's because I'd called in a song request to a radio station. I had been waiting on them to play the song so I could record it on a cassette. I am that old. They had finally played it, and I successfully recorded it. So I climbed into bed, got comfortable, and then grabbed my string and pulled. I was just turning the light off. About 5 seconds after turning it off, my room was filled with a blue light. I opened my eyes and scanned my room, and when I saw where the light was coming from, my blood went cold. There was a Native American man in full Native American clothing, standing in the center of my room with his arms crossed. Bright blue aura. I guess you could say it was like emanating from him. He just started to stare at me. I tried to scream, but I couldn't seem to move or scream for what felt like an eternity. I finally was able to scream, and once I did, I was able to grab my string and turn the light back on. He vanished. Told Mom it was a bad dream because she's definitely a non-believer in anything paranormal. I slept with the light on that night. The next day, my younger brother asked about what she had happened to her, and, well, told her what I had seen. He proceeded to tell me that he'd seen the exact same thing about a week before my experience. But he told me not to be scared. He said he believed the man was protecting us. Well, I'm 37 now and almost forgotten the incident until just now. I'm listening to Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories podcast, episode 12, and a story about an anonymous listener from San Diego who'd seen the exact same man. Only his was holding a hatchet, and I'm in Tennessee, opposite side of the country from the anonymous listener. As soon as I heard his story, I began shaking and crying. Now I'm curious. Has anyone else seen him? Ghost tried to kill me, but my dead grandma saved me. This happened about a year ago. I just had some paranormal things happen to me. I'll make another post about that if y'all want. This happened in the 2 following nights. I was sleeping on the couch in my game room because we had a boy staying with us for a while. So I gave up my room for him, and I went to sleep in my sister's room because she was off at college. When my sister comes to visit, I sleep on the couch, and I've always struggled sleeping because of nightmares. And on top of that, I've just always had a hard time falling asleep. And if I ever woke up in the middle of the night, I would never be able to fall back asleep. So I was able to fall asleep pretty fast that night. Woke up just last 3 in the morning, or probably past. I couldn't move my body. I couldn't even open my eyes. It freaked me out at first, but then it was just peaceful. It was also like my senses were amplified. I was fully aware of everything. Then all of a sudden, I felt something come into the room. I don't really know how to describe it. All I knew is that it was going to harm me. I felt it move from across the room to the couch where I was sleeping. Then I felt its cold hand squeezing my throat and another cold hand covering my nose and mouth. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move. My head, it was throbbing. I thought I was going to die, and I heard a familiar voice. Couldn't tell where I knew that voice from. It was sweet and gentle, but urgent. It was a female voice. She said, "You have to move now, Emily." It said it through my mind, and I said, "I can't." She responded with, "You have to try and move now." I summoned all my strength to punch whatever was choking me, shot my arm and whatever was by me. I was able to move by then, and quickly shot up, wide awake, gasping for breath, but ready to kick some butt. What I saw I can only describe as a shadow or a smoke man. I said to him, "Fuck off." Then he laughed and disappeared into a wall. I sat down on the couch and just stared at where he was at while I was rubbing my sore neck and catching my breath. I just stared at the wall for a good 15 minutes. Then I silently thanked the woman who helped me. There was a little bruising around my neck, a few scratches, and some redness, and that's how I know I didn't imagine all of this. The next night the same thing happened. I couldn't move and everything was peaceful. I heard a woman say, "Are you feeling better?" That's when I realized the voice was my grandma's, who had died just 3 or 4 days before this. I said through my mind, "Grandma?" She replied with, "Yes, it's me." Then I felt the man again, and I felt sick to my stomach. "Do you feel his presence, Emily?" she said. I replied with a yes, and instantly I couldn't breathe. I didn't feel his hand on me like last time. I just couldn't breathe. My grandma told me that I'm the protector of this house, and if he kills me, it puts everyone in the house in danger, and she said, "You have to fight back. Try to move, Emily." So I did the exact same thing as last time. I snapped up and was able to breathe. I looked at the smoky man and told him he was not welcome here. He dissolved in front of my eyes. My sister had woke up and heard me gasping for breath and came out of her room and saw the smoky man, and she told him he was not welcome here. I had no idea she was even there until the morning when she asked me about it. So I told her everything. She confessed to me that she woke up because she heard Grandma's voice telling her to check on me. We decided to keep this between us, and I have no idea what my grandma means about me being the protector of the house, and if I'm being honest, I don't really want anything to do with that. Tell me what y'all think. Creepy Tales from Kiribati. I lived on a small Pacific island nation of Kiribati about a year. That's last year. I'm American. I was called there to work as a missionary for my church. The island has Polynesian culture, but not much history. There isn't much known of how the people originally came to the island and where they even came from. There is a lot of dark magic and voodoo tales. Specific islands are notorious for certain things, like pretty girls or dark magic or giants and such. And on the more remote outer islands, dark magic is very prevalent. The main island, Tarawa, is very crowded and more advanced than the outer islands. But many other missionaries would give experiences they had or heard with dark spirits or black magic. The people are very superstitious and love magic tricks. A tradition they have is that their loved ones who die will reincarnate as rats. We're required not to kill or harm rats because if we do, we'll be cursed and rats will continue to come and haunt us, basically bite our stuff. I have first-hand experiences with this too. I've seen the people invite and feed rats in their house and none of their things are meddled with. But once, the American missionaries started killing rats and mice we saw in our house. The rats conspired against us, and we had lots of bad luck. The people also heavily believe in ghosts and spirits and demons. Anyways, that's just a little snippet of the culture, and actually doesn't have anything to do with the story. Here's the actual scary tale I was going to get to. The first town I was a missionary was in Tekhnika. As a family, we were teaching in the lower side of town, and it would take a good 10 minutes to bike down there. I know. Bikes and buses and trucks are basically the main mode of travel on this island. Our days were sort of busy, and so it was hard to find a time to visit this specific family. All of the other families we were visiting were in the western side of town. We were only able to visit this family at night at around 8:30 or 9. On one occasion we came down to teach this family. There was a lot of commotion at the neighbor's house. The Kiribati people love to throw parties for birthdays or when girls have their first period or new house is made. So as we approached the father of the family we were teaching, we asked him what was going on next door. He said it was a funeral. The family next door, we'll call them for the sake of the story, the Kora family, went through a terrible experience. The daughter of the Kora family passed away at the age of 7. She was having seizures and was brought to the only hospital by her parents. The doctors were able to get her under control, and the family stayed there at the hospital with their daughter. That night, the guards were standing march. They were by the wall of the hospital, spotted a small girl walking up to the gate. The girl had her dark hair covering her face, and she was only wearing underwear. The guards called out to the girl who was approaching the gate. The girl didn't answer. They asked where she was going, and all the girl did was raise her hand up and point toward the lagoon side of the island across the stream. The guards were so afraid, thinking she was a ghost, that they just let her pass. The following morning, the parents woke up and were very concerned because their daughter was missing. Police got involved, and information about what had happened came from the guards. A few hours later, the girl's body was found face down in the lagoon, north side of the island. She had drowned, and her face was so bloated. The girl had walked half a mile out in the low-tide lagoon to drown herself. Parents mourned and were so afraid. They said that the exact same thing had happened to the girl's grandmother. That grandmother had had seizures, went and just drowned herself in the lagoon. The creepy part being that the daughter of the Kora family had the exact same name as the grandmother. My first time babysitting. When I was around 12 years old, my family and I moved into a semi-detached house just up the street from our previous home. The house wasn't very big, and the floor plans for our part of the house were completely different from our neighbors. Our neighbors were a lovely little family of 4. Husband is from England, wife from Norway, which is where I live. They also had like a little 3-year-old girl and a 6-month-old baby boy. Now, I love children, always have, and at that time I really wanted to start babysitting. It's quite common to start babysitting at age 12, and I was turning 13 a month later anyway, so I wanted to find some small jobs. As I got to know our neighbors over the first few months of living there, my parents told the neighbors that if they ever needed a sitter, then it would be nice if they would consider trying me out. Seeing as it would be my first job as a babysitter, we thought it would be smart to start with my next-door neighbors, seeing as my parents would literally be on the other side of the wall in case anything actually happened. Cut to a Friday night, when my neighbors went to a party that was happening just down our street. We got there at around 8 p.m. and our parents told me that they would come home around 2 or 3 a.m. Both kids were already sleeping, so they told me to just put a movie on and relax. Now, these kids were the easiest to babysit ever. Once you put them to bed and they fell asleep, and, well, absolutely nothing would wake them up. They're like some of the heaviest sleepers I've ever seen, so babysitting them was usually pretty uneventful. I was on the couch watching Avatar in the living room on the second floor. The kids had their own separate bedroom. They were just downstairs where the front door was. I could basically see their bedrooms from where I was sitting, as the place is quite small. Because of the hallway, I couldn't see the front door, though. Now again, this house was very small, so as long as the TV wasn't on too loud, I could hear everything that happened downstairs. At around midnight, I heard the front door unlock, and my neighbors walked in whilst talking. I heard them close the door, and they started taking off their jackets and shoes. I thought it was a bit weird that they hadn't called to let me know that they were coming home early. I just assumed that it must have slipped their mind. So I went downstairs to greet them. I could hear them talking up into the point that I came around the corner to the hallway that led to the door. There wasn't anyone there. The talking fell silent. The second I turned that corner, the only sound was from the TV upstairs. My heart started beating so fast and my head was rushing. I ran to the bedrooms, checked the kids before, just scoured the rest of the house and opened every door, checked every cabinet for anything that could explain what just happened. There was nothing there. The kids were still sound asleep, and eventually I convinced myself I was imagining things. I checked the kids one last time, made sure that their doors were wide open so that I could, hear them from upstairs and see them. I sat down to finish the movie while trying to process what had just happened. But when I sat down, I noticed the TV had been shut off, even though I'd left it on. When I turned it back on, there was just snow on the screen. I couldn't for the life of me get it to work again. That's when the talking downstairs started up again. Not only that, but the baby started screaming bloody murder. The baby never woke up from naps and definitely wouldn't ever scream the way it did that night. I have never in my life ran down a staircase as fast as I did that night. I rushed toward the baby's bedroom only to find the door closed. I ripped the door open, picked up the baby, and rushed to pick up his sister. Took them both upstairs and held those kids for almost 3 hours before the parents came back home. The talking and sounds downstairs came and went as I had the kids with me on the couch. I held them as close to me as I could, and I tried my best to keep them asleep. As the parents came home, I was too scared to walk downstairs to greet them. I couldn't be sure if it was actually them or not until they walked up the stairs where they found me clutching their children. Obviously, they noticed I was upset, asked me what had happened. I honestly felt like I'd lost my mind at that point, but I told them the story anyway. After I was finished, they told me that it wasn't the first time that anything like that had happened there. Apparently, they heard voices all the time at night. I was kind of mortified that they didn't think to warn me before, but they said they are sorry that this happened to me, and the mom walked me home to my house. I slept with the lights on in my room for almost a month after that. And believe it or not, I did go back and I did babysit those kids again. Well, that makes sense. My sleep paralysis demon screams at me to tell them what I feel. I, a 22-year-old female, have suffered from sleep paralysis on a regular basis since I turned a year old. Every single sleep of my life has either been an immersive lucid dream or sleep paralysis. You might think I'm being dramatic when I say this, but I'm 100% sure that my first ever memory was actually sleep paralysis. And to start, I've moved at least 20 times since I was born. And I have memories of sleep paralysis in every single bedroom I've ever had. All of my descriptions of early bedrooms have been confirmed as accurate by my parents. We moved from my first house when I was around 1 year and a couple of months. So my first experience was a little bit after my first birthday. And at this point, we lived in a 2-story house. I have 2 older brothers who shared a bedroom in the bottom story of the house right next to my bedroom. Our parents' bedroom was just up the staircase, so that if their bedroom door was open, they could more or less see me sleeping in my crib. I was notorious for waking up in the middle of the night. I would scream bloody murder at that age. According to my mom, there's absolutely nothing that they could do to put me back to sleep as long as I was still downstairs in my room. In fact, it quickly became routine for my parents then to just bring me upstairs as fast as possible whenever I started to scream, mostly to spare my poor brothers from listening to my hysterics all night. Whenever they brought me upstairs, however, I would fall asleep immediately, and never wake up until my parents had to physically wake me up the morning after. This was the routine up until my first ever experience. As per the routine, I started screaming my lungs out at around 1 a.m. according to my mom. She picked me up as usual and brought me upstairs to their bedroom and put me in their bed where I quickly fell silent. Again, this was the routine that they were used to. Now this is where my first ever memory starts. I remember being tucked in between my mom and dad, and I distinctly remember the residual scent of my mother's perfume mixed in with the smell of her breath on my face. My dad's hand was stretched over my legs and drawing my mother closer as they tucked in around me. Eventually I woke up, slightly confused. I don't know why I was even awake. I remember feeling very confused and wanted to try to explore the room and try to find out what had woken me up. No matter how hard I tried, though, I couldn't move a single muscle in my body. My eyes darted around the room, desperately trying to discover the source of my discomfort. Feeling absolutely helpless, I tried screaming out to try to wake my mom or dad so they could help me. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't make a single sound. I distinctly remember the feeling of my tears running down my cheeks as I was lying there, mortified over the fact I couldn't make a single sound. Well, that's when I saw them. Two peculiar figures, standing at the edge of the bed, their forms illuminated by the subtle yellow glow of the moonlight creeping through the curtains of the window behind them. The figure on the left was the tallest. The one on the left was around half a head shorter, maybe. Couldn't really see much detail on their bodies, as their bodies looked almost as if they were out of focus. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't focus on any detail. Their faces, on the other hand, I wish I could delete certain details. I want to reiterate again that I was just barely a year old at this point. My reference bank of people at this point was my parents, my two older brothers. Seeing these two figures standing at the edge of the bed, I remember immediately thinking that this had to be my brothers wearing masks or something. The worst thing, though, was that even though I thought that the figures in front of me were my big brothers, I was still terrified. Their faces held the most grotesque grimaces I've ever seen. I still do not understand how I imagined them. The only way I can describe how the expressions were is, imagine if a fox and a badger were taxidermied, but the taxidermist's main inspiration was the uncanny valley. Yuck. I spent years believing my brothers hid these horrible animal faces, would spend those nights at the end of my parents' bed just staring at me, just tilting their heads as they examined my small form, gasping and fighting against everything keeping me from making noise. No matter what I did, though, I could never break eye contact with them. I know my description of the first ever sleep paralysis encounter might seem a bit long and too detailed. The thing is, though, although the subjects of my sleep paralysis have changed hundreds and hundreds of times since then, they've always just stared at me. There has been talking, sure, but it's never been directed to me. I've had sleep paralysis where I've heard my entire family being murdered. I've heard people screaming outside that my house is on fire, and that everybody needed to evacuate. But no one's ever talked to me. In 22 years of sleep paralysis almost every single month, there was always at least one figure just standing at the foot of my bed, just staring at me, keeping eye contact. They've never, ever asked me a single question. They've never said anything directly to me. They've only ever stared at me. Until last night. The last few weeks have been filled with the weirdest kind of sleep I've ever experienced. I haven't experienced much sleep paralysis for the past few years even. An isolated experience here and there, but nothing other than that. I used to sleep 10 to 14 hours every time I had to, try to sleep in. And this was especially true during weekends. As long as my blinders were up, I could sleep until physically disturbed. The past few months, however, something changed. No matter how tired I feel, I can't sleep longer than 6 a.m. at most. It absolutely does not matter how late I stay up, I still wake up at 6 a.m. on the dot. It's not that I feel like I've slept enough at that point either. I'll wake up exhausted and go to sleep even more exhausted. Wake up at 6 a.m. only to repeat this pattern. Yesterday, I went to sleep around 22:45 p.m. or 10:45 for us non-army folks. Or, I guess, us Americans. I've been sick all week. I had a lecture today that I was excited for. I wanted to make sure I was well rested for the next day. And as I've said, I'm a 22-year-old student. I live alone in the same apartment I've lived in for 2 years with my cat that I've had since I was 8. I haven't heard a single sound from a neighbor in the entirety of these 2 years. I went to sleep yesterday at around 2 a.m. I was absolutely exhausted. My cat fell asleep in between my legs, and I can't even say that I had any dreams. That was honestly my first sign that this wasn't going to be a quiet evening for me. My cat did wake up a couple of times in the early night, poking me and trying to get my attention. After 15 years, I know exactly how it feels when she's the one to wake me up. There is absolutely no room for confusion. Woke up at around 3 a.m. last night. Immediately, I was struck by this sudden small feeling I'd never felt before in my life. I couldn't open my eyes, no matter how fucking hard I tried. No matter how fucking hard I wanted. I could not fucking open my eyes. At this point, I tried my fucking hardest to scream as loud as I thought possible. I could feel the weight of my cat sleeping peacefully on my legs even though I still couldn't see her. I screamed and I screamed. I pushed and I pushed and tore my voice apart as hard as I fucking could to escape this fucking horrible, unholiness. My forced mutism and blindness was keeping me hostage as my body still laid in the bed completely paralyzed. My only connection to reality right now was my cat. I could still hear her purring. I could hear her water fountain trickling in the background. I could still hear her making biscuit. I could hear her making biscuit. Bisquick. Pancakes. Excuse that. The sound of it all in place of my forced silence was almost deafening as I laid there sleeping. That was until the point it all stopped. I struggled against my own body to try to force my eyes open to no avail. The harder I tried to force my eyes open, the harder and more painful it became. Couldn't get a single glimpse of what was happening. As it happened, though, I felt a large hand grab the lower part of my face, push it down into the dark. The hand kept a firm hand on my face and kept it down. I could hear this one voice reverberate almost inside my ears as they were screaming at me. Hey, Ellie, hey, how does it feel? I see you. Look at me. Tell me how it is. Hey, fucking listen to me. Tell me. Look at me. Come on, I fucking dare you. Look at me. Fucking listen to me. Tell me how you fucking feel, huh? Tell me how you fucking feel. Hello, I see you. Tell me how it fucking feels. Hello. No matter how much I kept trying to scream, I just couldn't fucking make it stop. The voice just kept repeating the same things, never allowing me to see anything until I begged it to stop. The screaming kept on going for at least 45 minutes. Felt like it at least before I was physically able to open my eyes and make them stop. I am terrified to go to sleep tonight. Man, just however long I was doing that made me uncomfortable. 45 minutes? No thank you. The person I met in my dreams. don't remember how long ago this was exactly. I think I was maybe about 15 years old, though. I was visiting my aunt in Belgium with my family, and I had a really nice dream that night. It was an extremely realistic dream. Don't remember it very well. The only thing I do remember is that I met a really pretty blonde girl who were my age on a train. The entire dream was us getting to know each other and falling in love. It was one of those dreams that when I woke up I thought it actually happened, and you can imagine my disappointment when I realized it was just a dream. Even when the realization hit me, it still felt off. I'm used to having realistic dreams, but this felt very different. Later that day, we're just going on a train to visit my grandparents in Germany. We hopped on the train and slept for the majority of the train ride. As we're getting off the train, I glanced down the aisle, and there I saw a girl who looked identical to the girl in my dream. She looked up, and we looked at each other, and I saw her gasp noticeably when she saw me. There's no doubt in my mind it was a look of surprise, and I could tell she recognized me. My parents pulled me off the train, and that was it. It's been something like 4 years, but I won't ever forget that look on her face. If anybody's wondering why I'm posting this now, and this happened so long ago, it's because I recently watched the anime Your Name and stirred up these memories again. It's not like it's the exact same situation by any stretch of the imagination, but it just reminded me of it. Also, I am aware that the story can very easily be explained as a coincidence, and very well could be, and I acknowledge the possibility that I'm turning nothing into something. But I personally am absolutely convinced something weird happened. I have no idea how or why, but in my mind, I know it did. Hey, my screen's coming back alive a little bit. Up, nope. Up, yep, up, nope. For all of you that are curious, my computer's in many pieces on the left side of me, strung together with pieces of wire not designed to deliver electrical current. And since it has overcurrent, because where I am there's no ground, they don't build houses with grounds for some reason, all the capacitors blew, so I have different lengths of cable that are the length they need to be in order to give the right resistance in order to make the screen go on. And oh, there it is. I can actually see the whole left side of my screen. Looks a little bit like a migraine. But anyway, screen and keyboard and everything shot, and I have it plugged into this TV that just broke this morning when I started recording. But it's coming back a little bit. 1/3 of the screen just, well, it looks like my TV has, nope, it's all black now. Nope. I digress. Where's the gecko? Just neighbor sounds. That'll have to do. Alrighty then. My paranormal experience when I was a kid. This happened when I was a child. I was hanging out with my friends in my room. It was New Year's Eve and my family was hosting a party. So all of the adults were celebrating outside, and us children were in my room doing something I don't remember, and I guess it really wasn't relevant. All of a sudden, my sister tells us to look at the door. We all turn our heads and see a very weird shadow from the crack between the door and the floor. And the doorknob was turning very slowly. This shouldn't have been too strange, but our door was locked, and our doorknob physically can't be turned when locked. The kids in the room went from being confused to scared. Without thinking about it too much, I leapt to my feet, opened the door to see what was going on. I opened the door and there was absolutely nothing there. I searched adjacent rooms for people to see if somebody was pranking us, but I found nothing. We quickly went to the parents and I asked them if they wanted something. They looked at me confused and my dad said they were good, and after the party I told my parents what happened, and that they should move out, since at this point I was very scared. They didn't believe me, thought I was either making it up or imagining it. I know what happened though, since not only my sister, but all the kids who were there remembered this experience vividly. weird guy assaulting me in an odd atmosphere. That doesn't sound good. This is a story that happened to me a few months ago. It's not the scariest story you'll find, but it appeared to me as a really strange situation. Sounds almost super normal. So 3 months ago, living for an exchange study in a big coastal city of Greece. Near to my place, there is a 3-kilometer long and straight modern seawalk. It was recently finished, going from the city to a really distant residential area. It was a really spaced area with trees and a park separating the seawalk from a big avenue. Being a really spaced and quiet place in comparison to the city center, it was a bit chaotic. I really liked to walk there. Many person were usually chilling and walking there like me. So this day I walked alone with my headphones, those 3 kilometers around 4 or 5 p.m. It was the end of the day, the sun was low, but it still was pretty lighty. It was still winter at that time, and still wintry, and there was many wind-agitated sea, but the walk still relatively frequented. At the end of the sea walk, there is a big red building riding on the sea, making the walk bypassing it, going right, then left following the sea. This portion was less maintained and a bit more isolated, with a dirty ground filled with trashes, broken benches. Arriving near of this portion, I noticed a guy a bit behind of me. He was walking at the same speed as me. Being behind, but on my right, I could see him quite easily. He was a small guy, around 30 years old, with a beard, medium long hair. He had a hoodie by a blue jacket. Didn't really care of him until I walked of the neglected portion at the end of the seawalk. Walking there, he started to talk to me in a weird language. I didn't talk Greek, but I really had the feeling that he didn't spoke as the other locals. He spoke in a really fast way. The Greek people being really nice, I first thought that he was friendly, trying to discuss with the stranger. I told him I didn't really spoke Greek and English, and as he continued to speak in his language and me insisting on the fact that I couldn't speak English, or rather just could speak English. Suspect. He came closer to me, and I really felt that he wasn't as friendly as I thought he was. After 1 minute of incomprehension, he started to be really too close to me. He seemed really pissed off, and strangely, there was absolutely no one around us. I felt the atmosphere really strange. Really abruptly, he took my forearm with his hand and told me really loudly with his weird accent, "Passport, passport!" I rejected him with my hand, and he continued to say the same word. He really wasn't any kind of policeman. Being really not a hot blood type, I told him really calmly but firmly to move out many times. "Goodbye, mister. Please move." He stayed here, so I moved away like 10 meters, going back the direction I came. He stared at me a few seconds and moved away too, going to the other direction. He didn't look in a hurry, just pissed off. Stayed here 1 minute, then a family appeared really quickly, walking quietly. They didn't look as if they saw the altercation. Until now, it looked pretty much as just a creepy encounter. This is where the story goes more strange to me. The direction the guy took was going left after my location, so I couldn't see the way he took. After 1 minute, I decided to follow his way, wanting to see what he was doing. I took the turn, and I was really surprised to see many people walking normally, but not any trace of the guy that just assaulted me. The walk offering no escape in less than 150 to 200 meters. The big red building on the left and the sea on the right before another turn further. Really had the feeling that the guy vanished really fastly. If he had run fast to get out, the people walking wouldn't look so normal, and I don't see why he would have escaped from me. I wasn't like calling the police or something. But I thought about it. When he was talking to me, I really had the feeling that the surroundings were completely empty of people, in an unusual way. But in the instant he vanished, many random people started to appear everywhere, every side of the walk, like if everything was going back to normal. My imagination made me thought that it could be like an encounter from another dimension or something. But then I thought that it probably could be a phantasma. Even if this encounter was weird by the fact that the guy vanished really quickly and that random people started to appear when he left, I can't really say for sure that it was a paranormal experience. But it was really odd, and some might even say supernormal, with a black picture of a gecko on it. I really don't know why the guy was asking me for my passport, and I don't really know if he was Greek. This is not a terrifying story. Maybe he just didn't like the foreigners. Maybe he was just a bit mad. But all the atmosphere around the altercation, it left me a weird feeling. So I'd like to have your impressions. It could be really interesting. I hope you all let you have a weird feeling as well. A good weird one, hopefully. Sweet dreams. See ya.